Hall of Fame Village Media and the Pro Football Hall of Fame present Football Heaven.
As we continue our two-part conversation exploring the unique history and culture of HBCU football, we are joined by the great middle linebacker of the New York Giants and South Carolina State alum, Harry Carson.
Why did you choose a historically black university to go to college?
One of my teachers at McClanagan High School, African-American teacher, Dorothy Jo McDuffie, said, you should be playing football for somebody somewhere. So she powered me up in her car and took me to South Carolina State. And when I went to South Carolina State, the first two people that I met when I got out of the car was Donnie Shell and Barney Chavis. And I met those guys, and I didn't know what was going to be the outcome in regards to getting a scholarship or whatever. And I got the scholarship, and we wound up all playing together. Barney Chavis was a senior that year, and he was being scouted by pro scouts from around the country. He went to the Denver Broncos. Donnie Shell eventually became a free agent by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Harry Carson was there, and so now South Carolina State has more Hall of Famers than the University of South Carolina and Clemson University. But I went to South Carolina State not because I wanted to, but that was the only option that I had. And I have to say that when I went, there were reasons why. I grew up during segregation and desegregation. I grew up having white guys drive through the black neighborhood saying, go back where you came from and all of that stuff. So there's a certain amount of anger that's sort of built in there because, it's just one of those things where people are taunting you and they don't think that you can do certain things, or, they're saying you need to go back where you came from, not realizing that I came from McLeod Hospital where most of them were born. And so I always remember that. And when I went to South Carolina State, I have to say that it was basically, and I said this then, but I continue to say it was the best 4 years of my life because I went there as a boy and I came out as a man. There were so many lessons that I learned from my coaches who knew how to talk to me, who knew how to nurture me, who saw talent, who cared about whether I got my education or not.
So, as you say that, after leaving South Carolina State and going to a professional football team where you did have white teammates and black teammates, was that jarring, or do you feel that you'd had a different preparation in those 4 years?
No, I had the preparation. I mean, I was, when growing up, there wasn't a racist bone in my body. There were other guys who had some issues with going and playing with white guys and so forth. For me, there was no difference, and I went and I did things to help incorporate black players coming in and playing with white guys. I was like the president of the biracial committee. I was one of those guys who wanted to keep the peace between, the black guys and the white guys, and white students and black students. And keep in mind, I'm in the South. I'm in South Carolina, and there's a lot of stuff there. And I wound up eventually becoming senior class president. I took ROTC, and I think ROTC, Air Force Junior ROTC, sort of helped me in regards to, wearing a uniform every Friday, and those individuals who I was marching in formation with. They were black and white, and you learn how to coexist with others regardless of what their skin color was. And so I kind of took that with me into football, and I was able to play or make the transition, play with the white guys and show that I belonged on the field, and they respected me over all these years of me being there and just playing the game the way the game should be played. And but I've always been an advocate for the guys who I played with, especially the black guys who I played with, because many times the black guys would hang out at my house on the weekend, and we'd watch Oklahoma and Nebraska at my house, and all the white guys would be going down to Myrtle Beach and in their cars with beer and all of that stuff, and we all just sort of hung together, and there's a closeness that is there over all these years. That closeness is still there because not only did we play on the football field together, but we bonded off the field together. And so I have a whole bunch of brothers or a whole bunch of friends. I mean, they're black and white, but the guys who I played with, they have always been my guys. And I wrote a book back in 2011 called Captain for Life. And I've always been a captain. I've always been an advocate for those players who I played with. And it's not just in the NFL, but also the guys who I played with in college, the guys who I played with in high school. I was their advocate. If something needed to be done, I'm the one who would step up and tell the coach, we need to do this, or we need to do that. And so...
Even Coach Parcells?
Even Coach Parcells. Really, Bill Parcells, he considered me to be one of his staunchest or best leaders in the locker room because I always had a gauge on the team. I mean, 1983, I think. No, it might have been 1984, where we didn't play well in 83. And Parcells came back to training camp in 84, and we had a change in linebacking. The linebacking core, Brad Van Pelt and Brian Kelly were no longer there. Carl Banks, Gary Reasons, Lawrence Taylor, myself were the linebackers. And Parcells worked our asses off, because we finished that season 3-12-1 or whatever. And he thought by working our rear ends off that, we'd get it. And so after about 3 weeks of working out, I went to Bill and I said, Bill, guys have been doing everything you wanted us to do. And I think what we need right now is a break. And he trusted me enough to do some things with the team that pulled us together. I mean, it was fun stuff, but it pulled us together. And just some stuff.
Just what we're trying to get to the juicy stuff right here. Why do you suppose there is such a kinship, or do you feel a kinship with other graduates of HBCUs here in the hall, whether they went to your school or not?
I feel a kinship from the standpoint that we all went through like experiences. If you go to a black school, you're not getting on a plane to fly and play somebody on Saturday and then get back on that plane and fly home. You get on a bus on Thursday night. You travel wherever you have to go. If you're playing Alcorn State University and you leave Orangeburg on Thursday night, you're on that bus for hours and hours, and you go all the way down to Mississippi or Alabama, wherever. You know what that experience is all about. And you know that you probably don't have the best equipment, you probably don't have the best facility. You make do with what you have. And so we all came from that like experience. So I know what, certain things feel like. I remember preparing for the NFL draft, and I got permission from Jim Carlin, who was the head coach at University of South Carolina, to go and work out in their facility at Williams-Brice Stadium. And I remember walking in and seeing the weight machines and, the lockers and all this. And I'm like, damn, South Carolina State, I mean, you had a little locker and you had like a weight machine. And, we didn't have what everybody else had. But the way that we were trained, we all understood what we were doing. We did a lot of running. We ran stadium steps and all of that stuff. But when we took the field on Saturday, we were ready. And so when you look at a guy like Jerry Rice, what made Jerry Rice as good as he was? It was his work ethic. You look at Walter Payton. What made Walter Payton as good as he was? It was his work ethics. You look at star player over and over and over, who will go to an HBCU. They don't necessarily have the best equipment. They make do with what they have, but they're going to get the job done. The other thing is, nobody gives you the speech, but when you go to an HBCU, you represent where you came from. And if you go someplace and you don't give your best, if you go to a team and you screw up and your name is in police blotter or whatever, it not only brings attention to you, but it also brings attention to that institution where you came from. And so for me, nobody told me that was what I was supposed to do, but I realized I represented South Carolina State. And, every Wednesday is like a Monday for NFL players. And they'd give you the game plan and scouting report and everything. And I'd go down the list of the upcoming opponent that we're going to play, and I would highlight who went to an HBCU, because I know they're going to be really dangerous. And if you don't think that these guys are going to bring it, you're going to be embarrassed, because they are made of a different stock than guys who were coddled and who went to a major college. Guys who go to an HBCU, they know that they have to walk in with a chip on their shoulder, because that's where you came from. People do not expect you to play to the level of guys at major institutions. When I was first drafted by Marty Schottenheimer to play in the NFL, Marty and I had a great relationship, but Marty wanted me to play a different position. I'd never played the middle linebacker position. That's what a lot of people don't know. They think that I've always played middle linebacker. I was a down defensive lineman. And so Marty drafted me to play a different position, and that's middle linebacker. And so I was able to learn that position and master it and play well. But when Marty and I were together, as I was, my first year, he told me flat out, he said, listen, and just like if he was my father, I have that much respect for him. He said, there are going to be people who are going to not believe that you can do this. And so if you went to Alabama or Southern Cal or Notre Dame, then they would say, yeah, he might be able to do it. But to go to a small black school in South Carolina, that's a long shot. And, Marty was astute enough to know that I was going to do some things wrong, but the things I did wrong, I got the same or better results. And he allowed me to just be myself and play. And that's the thing that, had it not been for having a great coach like a Marty Schottenheimer, I wouldn't be here in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because Marty Schottenheimer is the reason, because he had faith in me. He saw something in me that a lot of coaches and a lot of other teams would not have seen. And so I give thanks for, Marty. I give thanks for Willie Jeffries at South Carolina State. And I give thanks to South Carolina State for tolerating me. And, I got a 1.31, in my first semester. I'm glad I got that 0.31, because if it had been 3, I would have been on academic probation. But I straightened everything out, and, I graduated with my class.
With honors.
With honors. And, I'm happy with the experience and everything. And, and I share with young people. Sometimes you go through things, and it doesn't mean that everything is final. You can redeem yourself in so many ways, and just give the best that you have within yourself.
Well, we desperately appreciate this. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, you're quite welcome.
And
the invoice is coming, so.
As we continue our conversation on the HBCUs and the initiatives we're taking, Joe, I'm going to let you do this right here, because we are now joined by the 2 Black College Football Hall of Fame co-founders and 2 of the legends in our game, Doug Williams and James Shaq Harris. Joe, tell us what we need to know about these 2 gentlemen.
Doug and Shaq are 2 longtime friends, and Shaq, we go back over 50 years. Shaq and I was Shaq's ball boy in Buffalo when he was a rookie. That's how far.
Wait. Shaq, did he do a good job? Did he keep the balls dry?
Oh yeah, he was great. Joe broke me into Buffalo, made my trip very comfortable, and after 50 years, the relationship has been tremendous, and it's always good to talk to Joe.
Well, it's always good to have you, Shaq. And Doug, we've known each other, a couple of decades as well. We're getting old. That's the real truth here. But the story never gets old, and that's what we really want to talk to you 2 guys about today. And we've talked a lot with some other guests about HBCUs and how they were impacted by them. But you guys, you started the Black College Football Hall of Fame, which has now been around since 2009. Wow, that's a long time. But tell us a little bit about how the 2 of you got started on that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your career with Grambling with Eddie Robinson. But let's first talk about how the Black College Football Hall of Fame was founded.
Well, I think number one, the both of us was blessed to be able to go to Grambling and finally meet each other and been knowing each other a long time. And we started the foundation. We had a Harris Williams Foundation at first, and we used to talk. We talk every day, and we talk about what has happened in HBCUs over the years, the players that have went through there, the great players. And then, one day we just got to talking about the guys that have not gotten their roses. And we felt like, somebody needed to do something. And we found out that somebody was us. And we decided to start the Black College Football Hall of Fame, thanks to Arthur Blank down in Atlanta and John Piari, with John Piari Pavement. They was our 2 sponsors who allowed us to have our first event. We didn't have no idea where we was going, but we had a plan to start, and we started it, and here we are today. And we have been able to honor a lot of guys that are in the NFL Hall of Fame and guys that are not, but had great college careers that deserve to be honored at this time.
George,
Go ahead, Chuck.
As we travel around the country and different events, Super Bowls and other Value Classics, and meet other players, and they tell about their story and guys begin to pass away, we begin to think about this great history. How many great players we had, the great history, the great coaches and their contribution. And we felt that story should be preserved. And that was another reason we thought that it was very important that we start the Black College Football Hall of Fame.
Well, for those that don't know, the Black College Football Hall of Fame's permanent home is being built right here in the Pro Football Hall of Fame within the walls of this museum. And that's something we're very proud of, and we're working very hard to see that come to fruition here in the next year or two.
Hey, so let me say this too, and we'd like to thank you and Jim Porter, Adrian, and David Baker for supporting us and having a permanent home there in the the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, Shaq, Doug, it was an easy sell, because we really feel that, the story of Black college football, which began in 1892, the same year that pro football had its first game, they operated on parallel universes. The two never met. The black colleges and the white colleges. There were no blacks in pro football. There were a handful that were the outliers over the years. But the story is, really why there wasn't. And one of the real changes in the culture, I think, happened with Grambling College, with Eddie Robinson. And the two of you were able to, have that experience with Coach Rob rather. And, tell us a little bit about, I know, Shaq, you and I have talked about it many times about how, he was a father-like figure. And his promise to your mother was to, have you graduate from college. But tell us about that experience with Coach Rob and what it meant to, to football, but to you more importantly.
Well, all my teachers and principals that I went to school with, most of them had attended Grambling, and Coach Robinson was their hero, and they were my hero. So it was a natural transition, but when he came to my home and promised my mother that if I go to Grambling, I would be able to get a college degree. I would be able to go to church on Sunday. And at the end, I would make a difference in society. And when I got to Grambling, all those promises was kept. But the most important thing about Coach Robinson, and people ask me all the time, is that as a young 18-year-old, when you had questions, he had answers.
Doug, you were later, but when Shaq came out of Grambling, there were no black college or black quarterbacks in the pros. And, Shaq went to Buffalo, as we talked about. I was that ball boy that picked him up at the airport that day when he arrived. But that was a real challenge for him to break that glass ceiling. Now, he did that and made it possible for players like you, Parnell Dickerson later on, to break into the pros, but it still wasn't, you were still a black quarterback. You weren't Doug Williams' quarterback. How did Coach Rob prepare you for that transition into the pros?
Well, it's not too much different what Shaq said, but a decade later, the same tactic that he used to recruit Shaq, he used to recruit me, because I didn't know I was going to Grambling until my mom woke me up one night and told me I was going to Grambling. And I asked her, how did she know I was going to Grambling? She said, I just talked to Coach Rob. And he said you was going to go to class, you was going to go to church, and you was going to graduate. And you go into Grambling. So I wasn't going to argue with my mom at that particular time. But what Coach did, Coach did prepare as a player. He was tough on you as a player. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, after every practice, we didn't talk about X's and O's. He talked about what goes on around that campus, what goes on away from that campus, what goes on in America. He prepared you to be able to survive out there when you leave there. And I can remember on draft day going to coach, and I had this reservation because I followed Shaq and all the other guys, black quarterbacks that had played in the league, and I know they wasn't given that opportunity. And I told Coach a week before draft day, I said, Coach, if I don't go before the third round, I said, I'm just going to go home and be a high school coach. And Coach said, oh, hell no, you can't do that. I said, why? He said, hell, I don't care when you get drafted. You got to go. You got to show them you can play. Mm-hmm. And I said, then you thought about that. So Coach Rob said that. What else you going to do? Yeah. You don't have no choice. Wherever you get drafted, whether or not it was the first round, whether or not it was the 10th round, you had to go and show you can play. And at that time, I realized that as long as I was away from Grambling, the more I realized what Coach Rob meant to me as an individual, as an American, as a man. It was bigger than just being your football coach.
As Doug says that, Joe makes the point that at one time you were constantly called not just a quarterback with a capital Q, but a black quarterback with a capital B and a capital Q, and that was a modifier. Now, this many years later, when you look back, is it still a source of irritation? Is it still a modifier, or is there pride
No,
in it?
I take a lot of pride in it because, like I said, in 1978, we have had a couple black quarterbacks, but we hadn't had a guy that was picked in the first round to be the quarterback. And I never will forget. I mean, every article that was written in Tampa, it wasn't Tampa's quarterback. It was either Tampa Bay's black quarterback or Doug Williams, black quarterback for Tampa Bay. And I had to deal with that for a few years. And as years has gone by, it gives me so much gratification to see when they write an article on a young African-American quarterback now, it ain't black. It's the quarterback. No matter who it is, like Deshaun Watson coming back this week. They're not saying a Cleveland black quarterback coming back. It's Deshaun Watson. It's either Russell Wilson. It's Patrick Mahomes. To me, it tells me we've come a long ways. We still got a long ways to go, but we've come a long ways, and we don't use that adjective no more. So that's, to me, is gratifying.
Hey, Shaq and Doug, when you talk, you've come a long way. There's a lot of plans that are in the works, and some of them are already come to fruition because of the Black College Football Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about some of the, like there's the Classic here in Canton, but there's also the Legacy Bowl. Tell us what's, really happening now that is impacting players in the HBCUs in a way that only you two guys could have done with the Black College Football Hall of Fame.
Well, I think the next thing that we have coming up in February we're looking forward to is the Classic. I mean, the Legacy Bowl. The Legacy Bowl was started a couple of years ago when there were only one player drafted from the HBCU schools. Doug and I both played in the league. We both worked in the league as scouts. And we know that there are players who have the ability to play if given the opportunity. We also understand how the draft works. At the back end of the draft, many times, you're playing a hunch. You're looking for special team players. You're looking for guys that are measurables. Well, the HBCU have some of those guys, and we feel that they deserve a chance. So starting the Legacy Bowl, giving them an extra opportunity to be evaluated by scouts. And also this year, we also had a combine there. And the combine does the same thing, brings scouts in and allows them to be measured with their skill set. So we're happy to have the Legacy Bowl, and then I'll let Doug talk about the Classic.
Doug, Shaq mentioned the combine. You've been involved in combines, on the pro level for a long time. How important is it to give these kids from HBCUs an opportunity to showcase their talents?
The combine is very important because when you look at it from a realistic standpoint, Joe, we used to have, we used to pray that we'd get somebody from HBCU at the combine up in Indy. And you might get one every now and then. You might get two every now and then. But what we do now with this combine, the HBCU combine, we get a chance to bring in 40 or 50 guys that come in and go through the same routine that they do up in Indy, combine-wise, and give them an opportunity to be seen. And with all the scouts being there, we're giving a lot more guys an opportunity because there's no way in my mind, and I'm sure Shaq feels the same way, to say that we don't have somebody, 5, 10 to 15 guys that deserve an opportunity to showcase their ability. And what this does, this gives the NFL a whole different playing field to look at guys and give them an opportunity to come to a team, to be brought in either at the draft pick, free agent. No matter how they get in, the most important thing is getting in.
Right. And to your point, though, that's exactly kind of the point of this conversation is that wouldn't have happened without the Black College Football Hall of Fame. That wouldn't have happened without, you and Shaq working together to bring to light the fact that, hey, there's a lot of talent in these schools that are being overlooked. Now, let's add. I'm going to jump fast forward to. Go ahead, Shaq. You got something to say.
There's another addition to the Legacy Bowl too, is that we have job fairs. We're trying to help some students, HBCU students, get employment. We have over 60 vendors and sponsors who bring in over 800 students. We'll be busing them in from 6 schools and inviting others in. And hopefully we'll be able to get some of those graduates or those HBCU schools some employment.
Yeah, that's really important. Doug, you know very from firsthand experience, breaking into the administrative levels of pro teams, even college teams. It's a college programs. It's a tough sell sometimes for anybody. But that's an important element that Shaq brings up. These job fairs and going back to Coach Rob's philosophy, it's about getting an education. It's not just about.
It's all about education. At the end of the day, Joe, you know, and that's why going to HBCU was big for me, Shaq, and guys, especially during our time, because we didn't get the opportunity that everybody else got. But getting the education was something that Coach Rob believed in. You know, you're talking about a guy that graduated probably 95% of his players. Because when you went to Grambling, you know, they if they go home, they had a lot of hard work to do. So they stayed at Grambling to get that degree to keep them going on. So it was easy to get guys to graduate back then, and that's the same thing today. We're giving them opportunity to maybe get a shot at the NFL. But the most important thing with the job fairs and everything, you know, you got a chance to go and see. And we're not bringing guys in for the job fair. We bring guys that has jobs in their hands to pass out to guys who's interested and wanting to go work somewhere.
Doug, as you talk about us moving forward and things getting better and players not necessarily being identified by their race, why are the HBCUs still so important? Why?
It's a good question.
Excuse me?
That's a good question. And you know, I hear a lot of people say we don't need HBCU. But see, they don't understand that if you don't have the HBCU, that's an awful lot of other guys and girls that would not be getting the education. When you look around the country and you find out how many students at this HBCU, or what have you, so some of them can't get into some of the other institutions. And at the end of the day, the HBCU are there for a reason. That's why they were started. They were started because of the same reason, because they couldn't go other places. And now we're here, we're established, and I don't think the HBCU should go anywhere. I think what should happen, we should fund them more. That's the most important thing, to give everybody the same opportunity that everybody else has.
When you see all the flash and dash of Deion Sanders in the HBCU world, look at Doug laughing. What do you think, Shaq?
Oh, I think it's good. I think HBCU has, these last couple of years, Deion has done a good job of promoting the HBCU brand. And I think there have been donations, and it's a good thing. And I think the rest of us, all of us, has to get together, get behind that wave, and continue to reach out to others to support a great cause. And the HBCU provides a great education. If you look around this country, you'll see so many of our graduates who are doing well, and they're doing well in decision-making capacities. So we provide a good education, and we also plan we have coaches that are doing a good job coaching football. So we say to the young players, get an HBCU school chance.
Doug, what's one experience you can have in an HBCU that you can't have anywhere else? What's the difference if you go to Grambling versus Florida State? If you've got a young superstar who can choose, why would you say, hey, this will set you up in a different way?
Well, I think number one, you go back to Deion Sanders, for instance, the kid Travis Hunter. You know, Travis Hunter's talent would take him any institution in the country. It doesn't matter. But he chose Jackson State. And I think he chose Jackson State based on Deion, but also based on an opportunity to go somewhere where he know no matter what happened, no matter where he goes, on campus or off campus, he going to be embraced. You know, it's kind of like going back to a homecoming. You go to any homecoming in the country, but if you go to an HBCU homecoming, it ain't a homecoming. It's a family reunion. And that's the way it is. You know, you go to other games, you see fans, you know, the black fans are not sprinkled in the middle of the stadium. They're always in the corner in the end zone. And what the HBCU give you opportunity, no matter where you are sprinkled, you feel comfortable because you at home. It's a homecoming. And I think that's the experience that you cannot talk to somebody about to get. You can't talk about what it's like. You got to experience it yourself. And, as I sit here and I see a lot of guys, the 5 stars and all that going other places, and I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to go to a Grambling, because when I was coming out, it didn't matter what other school offered me, because I saw Eddie Robinson every Sunday morning. And I knew the players and students on that campus had a great time, because a lot of guys who went to Grambling went to my high school, and they came back and talked about it. And then I got a chance to feel it and understand, and talk about going to a HBCU. So if you don't go, it's hard to understand what it's like going.
Shaq and Doug, when at the induction ceremonies in Atlanta for the Black College Football Hall of Fame, we always take an opportunity to interview the new class and some of the returning Hall of Famers. And they're never in the room together, but we ask the same questions and we get the same answers. And the thing that comes through that you were just explaining is that every college and university has their alumni. But if you went to an HBC, you got 2 alumni. You got the alumni of the school you went to, and you got the alumni of just having gone to an HBCU and had that experience. As a part of the Black College Football Hall of Fame having its permanent home here in Canton, we started a classic, an annual classic, Labor Day weekend. We've had our 3rd. We were interrupted briefly there with COVID, like everybody was, but each year it grows more and more in this community, which has become a really important element of our community already in just 3 short years. But it also, and Shaq brought something up, and I want to go back to it real quick, Shaq, because you and I talk about it a lot. Having the Black College Football Hall of Fame here, having the classic here, is not just about the Hall of Fame, it's not just about the classic. It is a marketing tool for HBCUs. Because, believe it or not, there's only one HBCU in the region around here in Canton, Ohio, and that's down at Central. But that's one of the things we always said about this whole experience. This is about marketing and giving students a thought process of considering HBCUs. There's an education component to everything we do here at the Hall of Fame, and that's one of them, is to make sure that message is still delivered. But every year, the classic, Doug, Shaq, has been growing in popularity. You've seen it. We honor the Black College Football Hall of Fame recent inductees. The classic experience is kind of like the Legacy Bowl. It's not just a game. In fact, the game is just the excuse to have a gathering. A classic is something you have to see to believe. I mean, the marching bands, all the festivities that go around it, and the way that the community gets involved, and the way that alumni come to Canton, it's second to none.
Last thing I'd like to say, too, I'd certainly like to see the Hall of Fame voters consider Doug Williams for the Hall of Fame. Doug, what people don't know is that Doug played for Tampa. That 2 came in with a team that was underachieving, led them to 2 championship games, went on to Washington and won the Super Bowl, which he's known for. But as you travel around the country, you know that his performance has been one of the great contributors in the history of football. And most people remember where he was on that day. Doug Williams has become an American hero and has presented one of the great contributions to our game that is worthy of being considered for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Shaq, I never, I'm not a voter, but I will tell you that in my heart, he'll always be a Hall of Famer. But I will echo something you said. There are certain plays, there are certain games, there are certain reasons that resonate in history to remember somebody. And all of those things were involved in that Super Bowl. I mean, you talk about getting knocked down and getting back up. There was physical pressure. There was emotional pressure. There was the pressure of being in a Super Bowl. There was pressure of being the first black quarterback to lead his team through a Super Bowl. And he responded, as we all know, in MVP fashion. And, I think particularly those folks that aren't that familiar with that game, go back and look at it and look at the circumstances surrounding Doug's playing in that game. He was competing against the opposing team, but he was competing against the odds too, and he's competing against everything that somebody could throw at somebody in one game, and rose to the occasion. And I think it's one of the, as you say, one of the great, and we call it moments, but I'll call it one of the great games of all time, but highlighted by that getting up off the ground when other men probably would not have.
At Grambling, we call that a routine Grambling day for this.
Next week, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception when we are joined by Hall of Famers Franco Harris, Joe Green, Fred Biletnikoff, and Jerome Bettis in football heaven.
Visit Canton and experience Hall of Famers' hometown favorites for yourself. Plan your trip to America's playing field. If you enjoyed today's episode, please check out the Hall's other exciting podcast, The Mission.
For more Football Heaven episodes and bonus content, please visit Hall of Fame Village Media and Pro Football Hall of Fame social media.